Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dive.
Glad to be back.
Me too. And today we're going to be looking at a really fascinating subject that's really relevant to a lot of our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think this one's going to be really helpful for a lot of people.
So we're going to be diving deep into practical ways to learn English.
And easy ways.
Yes, easy and practical, which is,
That's a key, isn't it?
that's the key, right?
Yeah.
Everyone wants to know the easy and practical way to do things.
Exactly.
And especially when it comes to language learning.
Absolutely.
So our main source material today is this really cool resource called Easy Ways to Learn English.
Catchy title.
Catchy title, right? It gets right to the point. And it's a PDF.
PBS.
So it's really accessible, and we're going to be pulling out some of the most valuable insights from this resource.
Your cheat sheet
Yeah, exactly.
to learn English.
Yeah, and think of this episode as your cheat sheet to learn English quickly and effectively.
Exactly.
So are you ready to dive in?
Let's do it.
Okay. So the first method that we're going to be looking at, and this is really fundamental, is immersing yourself in English.
Immersing.
And when we say immerse, we don't necessarily mean that you have to pack your bags and move to an English-speaking country.
Well.
Although, that could be an option for some people.
Yeah, sure.
But it's more about making English a much bigger part of your daily life.
Exactly.
And the source material has some really practical tips for doing this.
It does.
So one of the things that they recommend, and this is something that I've actually tried myself, is switching the language settings on your phone and laptop to English.
Oh, interesting.
You've ever tried that?
I've heard that before, but I've never actually done it myself.
Yeah. It's one of those things that you kind of think about doing, but then you're like, that might be too hard.
Yeah, I don't want to, mess anything up.
Yeah, exactly. But it's actually not that bad, and you get used to it pretty quickly.
Right.
And the benefit is that you're constantly being exposed to English, even if you're not actively trying to learn it.
It's like passive learning.
Exactly.
It's just there.
Yeah.
You're absorbing it.
Yeah, you're absorbing it subconsciously.
Subconsciously.
And it really does make a difference over time.
I bet.
You start to pick up on patterns and vocabulary that you wouldn't have noticed otherwise.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and another really practical tip from the source material is to commit to learning just 5 new English words every day.
5.
That's 5.
That's it.
That's it.
That seems manageable.
Very manageable, right? And the key is to actually use them in sentences.
Okay.
So don't just memorize the definition.
Don't just make flashcards.
Yeah, don't just make flashcards, right? Because that's not going to help you actually remember the words and use them in real life.
No, you got to use them.
You got to use them, so try to come up with a sentence for each word, even if it's a silly sentence.
Right, even if it doesn't make
Yeah.
sense.
Exactly. The point is to make it fun and engaging and to get your brain working with the words.
And also to think about, different contexts that you might use those words in.
Exactly.
So you're not just stuck with one definition.
Exactly. You're thinking about all the different nuances.
The nuances.
Yeah.
So you're saying 5 words a day.
5 words a day,
Try to use them in different sentences.
different sentences.
Okay.
And another really good tip from the source material is to try to incorporate English reading into your morning routine.
Okay.
So even if it's just for 10 or 15 minutes,
What kind of reading?
well, they recommend things like English newspapers.
Oh,
So, things like The Hindu was mentioned specifically,
okay.
or English blogs.
Right.
Just something that you find interesting and that's at your level.
So it's enjoyable.
Exactly.
You're not forcing yourself to read something you hate
Yeah.
every morning.
Yeah, exactly. Because then you're not going to stick with it. So it's got to be something that you enjoy and that you look forward to reading.
Okay, so that's reading 5 words a day and changing our phone settings.
Yeah, and all of that's about immersing yourself, right?
Right.
So making English a more natural part of your day-to-day life.
How do you guys
And
try?
that's really the foundation for everything else.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So what's next?
Okay, so the next method that we're going to be looking at is listen and learn.
Listen and learn.
And this is all about improving your listening comprehension skills,
Okay.
which are so important for language learning.
Especially English, right?
Yeah, especially English.
Yeah.
Because there are so many different accents and dialects,
Absolutely.
and it can be really hard to understand people sometimes.
Yeah.
So the source material has some really great tips for improving your listening skills.
Okay, lay them on me.
So one of the things that they recommend is listening to podcasts.
Like this one.
Like this one, exactly.
Awesome.
And they specifically mention BBC 6-Minute English as a great option for learners.
6-Minute English.
Yeah, it's a really good podcast.
I've heard of that one.
Yeah, and it's only 6 minutes long.
So it's short and sweet.
Short and sweet, exactly. And it's perfect for fitting into those little pockets of time that you might have throughout the day.
Like your commute.
Yeah, like your commute or while you're doing the dishes or whatever.
Right. And it's focused on English learning.
Exactly.
So they're explaining things in a way that makes sense for people who are still learning.
Exactly. And they use clear and simple language, and they also provide transcripts for each episode so you can follow along if you need to.
Oh, that's really helpful.
Yeah, it's super helpful. And you can also find podcasts on pretty much any topic that you're interested in.
Okay.
So you can find something that you actually enjoy listening to.
Right. So it's not a chore.
Exactly.
It's something you look forward to.
Yeah, and the source material also suggests watching English cartoons or TED Talks on YouTube.
Cartoons.
Yeah, cartoons.
Interesting.
You know, they can be a really great way to learn English,
Okay.
especially for beginners,
Okay. I can see that.
because the language is usually pretty simple,
Yeah.
and there are often a lot of visual cues to help you understand what's going on.
Right. It's not just the audio.
Exactly.
You have the visuals to help,
Yeah, and they also recommend TED Talks.
which are a bit more challenging, I imagine.
Yeah, they can be a bit more challenging,
Yeah.
but they're also really interesting and engaging.
They are, and they cover a wide range of topics.
Yeah, so you can find something that you're interested in.
That's the key, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Got to be interesting.
It's got to be interesting, and it's got to be something that you're motivated to listen to.
Right.
And the source material also gives a really good tip for watching videos in English, which is to start with subtitles on
Subtitles
and then gradually turn them off
as you get better.
as you get better. Exactly. So it's like a scaffolding, right?
Like training wheels.
Like training wheels, exactly. And then as you get more confident, you can take the training wheels off.
That's a good analogy.
Oh, and speaking of challenges, the source material actually even suggests, and this is kind of funny, they suggest listening to Eminem's raps for those who want a real challenge.
Eminem.
Yeah, Eminem.
Wow, that's a whole other level.
Yeah, it's a whole other level, but it just goes to show that you can learn English from all sorts of sources, even unexpected ones.
Exactly. So you're saying podcasts, YouTube videos, cartoons, TED Talks.
Yeah, all sorts of stuff.
And Eminem,
And Eminem if you're feeling brave.
if you're feeling brave.
So we've got all these resources that are going to help us with our listening skills.
Right. That's the listen and learn part.
Exactly. So what comes after listening?
Well, imagine after you've spent some time listening, you probably want to start speaking.
Exactly. So the next method that we're going to look at is speak without fear.
Ooh, I like that.
Right. And this is something that I think a lot of English language learners struggle with.
Yeah, the fear of making mistakes.
Exactly. The fear of making mistakes and sounding silly or being judged.
Right. Everyone's terrified of sounding stupid.
Yeah. And the source material really emphasizes that mistakes are okay.
Mistakes are okay.
They're a natural part of the learning process.
In fact, they're important.
Yeah, they're actually essential for learning.
If you're not making mistakes, you're probably not learning.
Exactly. So the key is to not be afraid to make mistakes.
Easier said than done.
Easier said than done, I know, but there are a few things that you can do to make it easier on yourself.
Okay, so what can we do?
So one of the things that they recommend is to practice speaking in front of a mirror.
In front of a mirror.
Yeah, and this might sound a little silly,
It does sound a little silly.
but it's actually really helpful
Okay.
because it allows you to see yourself and to hear yourself.
You get to see your own facial expressions.
Exactly. And you can see if you're making any weird faces or if your mouth is moving in a strange way.
Right.
And you can also hear how you sound. And you can start to identify any areas where you need to improve your pronunciation.
So it's like self-assessment.
Exactly. It's like giving yourself feedback.
Okay, I like that.
And they also recommend starting with a simple topic like my daily routine.
Okay.
You know, just something that you're familiar with and that you can talk about easily.
Something easy to start with.
Yeah, and then gradually work your way up to more challenging topics.
So, mirror, simple topic, and what else?
Another great tip from the source material is to try to connect with native English speakers.
Okay.
And there are a few different ways to do this.
Like what?
Well, they recommend language exchange apps like HelloTalk or Tandem.
I've heard of those.
Yeah, and these apps are great because they connect you with people from all over the world who are learning English
Okay.
or who speak English as their native language and are learning your language.
So you can help each other out?
Exactly. It's a win-win situation.
That's cool.
Yeah, and you can chat with people, you can voice call, you can even video call.
So you can practice your speaking skills
Exactly.
in a real-life setting.
In a real-life setting with real people.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a really great way to get over that fear of speaking.
And to get feedback on your pronunciation and grammar
Exactly.
from native speakers.
From native speakers.
That's really valuable.
Yeah. And the source material also suggests recording yourself speaking English for 1 minute each day.
Recording yourself.
Yeah. And then
Okay.
reviewing the recording.
Listening back to yourself.
Yeah. And this might sound a little bit cringy.
It does sound a little cringy.
But it's actually really helpful because it allows you to hear yourself objectively.
Without the pressure of someone else listening.
Exactly. And you can identify areas where you need to improve your pronunciation, your grammar, your vocabulary, your fluency.
Right. And you can track your progress over time.
Exactly. You can see how far you've come.
I like that.
Yeah. And the source material makes a really important point here, which is that fluency is more important than perfect grammar.
Fluency over grammar.
Especially in the early stages.
Okay.
You know, when you're first starting to speak English,
Right.
it's more important to be able to get your message across.
Than to get every single grammar rule correct.
Exactly. Because if you're too focused on grammar, you're going to be hesitant to speak.
Right. You'll be too afraid to make a mistake.
Yeah, and that's going to hold you back.
That makes sense.
So don't be afraid to make mistakes. Focus on getting your message across, and the grammar will come eventually.
Okay, so we've talked about immersing ourselves, listening, and speaking.
Right.
So what's the next key?
Okay, so the next key is to make it fun.
Make it fun.
Yeah, because learning English shouldn't feel like a chore.
No, it should.
It should be something that you enjoy.
Absolutely.
So the source material has some really great tips for making English learning fun and engaging.
Okay, I'm excited to hear this.
So one of the things that they recommend is watching English movies and TV shows.
Ooh.
Fun, right?
That's easy.
And they specifically mention shows like Friends, The Crown, and Stranger Things.
Good shows.
Good shows,
Yeah.
right? And the great thing about watching TV shows and movies is that you're exposed to natural English.
Real English.
It's real English, exactly, the way that people actually speak it.
Not textbook English.
Not textbook English, exactly. And you can also pick up on cultural references and idioms and slang.
All the fun stuff.
All the fun stuff. And they recommend starting with subtitles
Okay.
and then gradually turning them off as you get better.
Like with the YouTube videos and stuff.
Exactly. It's the same principle.
Right, so you're not overwhelmed.
Yeah, you're gradually challenging yourself.
Okay.
And they also recommend playing games in English.
Games.
Yeah.
Games.
Like what kind of games?
Well, I mentioned things like Scrabble and word cookies,
Okay.
and even online quizzes like Kahoots.
Kahoots?
Yeah, have you ever played Kahoots?
I have. It's fun.
It's fun, right?
Yeah.
And it's a great way to learn new vocabulary and grammar.
In a competitive setting. In a competitive setting, exactly.
Yeah.
And the source material also suggests engaging with English social media.
Social media.
Yeah, so things like reading memes in English.
Right.
Or joining online communities like English learning on Reddit.
Reddit?
Yeah, so it's all about finding ways to make English a part of your everyday life in a way that's fun and enjoyable.
Right, so it doesn't feel like work.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got immersion, listening, speaking, and making it fun.
Mm-hmm.
What's the last key?
Okay, so the last key, and this is probably the most important one, is consistency is key.
Consistency.
Consistency, yeah.
That's huge.
It's so important.
Yeah.
Because you can do all of the things that we've talked about,
Right.
but if you're not consistent,
You're not going to see results.
you're not going to see results. Exactly.
So how do we stay consistent?
Well, the source material recommends setting aside a specific time each day for English learning.
Yeah.
And they suggest doing it in short bursts.
Short bursts.
Yeah, so like 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes at night.
10 minutes twice a day.
Yeah, that's it.
That seems doable.
It's very doable, right?
Yeah.
And it's much more effective than trying to cram in a long study session once a week.
I agree.
You know, it's all about building that habit.
Right, making it a part of your routine.
Exactly.
Okay, so 10 minutes twice a day.
10 minutes twice a day. And they also recommend reviewing your progress regularly.
Riveling.
Yeah, so like every week or so,
Yeah.
just take some time to reflect on what you've learned.
To see how far you've come.
Exactly. And to identify any areas where you might need to focus a bit more.
Right, and to celebrate your successes.
Yes, definitely celebrate your successes.
That's important.
It's so
To
important.
stay motivated.
Stay motivated. And the source material has a really great quote here that I love, which is, practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes progress.
I like that.
It's so true, right?
Yeah.
Because no one's ever going to be perfect,
Especially in language learning.
especially in language learning.
Yeah.
But as long as you're making progress,
That's all that matters.
That's all that matters.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
What are some of the key takeaways?
So to recap, we've explored 5 really powerful methods for learning English.
5 methods.
And all of these are based on the insights from the Easy Ways to Learn English PDF.
Oh, sheet.
Our cheat sheet, exactly.
Okay.
So the first method is to immerse yourself in English
Immerse.
by changing your phone settings.
Learning new words.
Reading English materials, yeah. The second method is listen and learn.
Listen and learn.
Like listening to podcasts, watching videos, listening to music. Eminem, yeah. The third method is speak without fear.
Speak without fear.
By practicing in front of a mirror.
Talking to native speakers.
Recording yourself, the fourth method, is make it fun.
Make it fun.
By watching movies and TV shows, playing games, and engaging with social media.
Social media.
And the fifth and final method, and this is the most important one, is consistency is key.
Consistency is key.
Setting aside time each day, reviewing your progress, and celebrating your successes.
I love it.
Yeah, and the source material ends with a really inspiring call to action, which is, don't just learn English, live English.
That's great.
Yeah, it's such a great way to put it.
It really captures the essence of it.
Yeah, it's not just about studying grammar rules and memorizing vocabulary.
It's about making English a part of your life.
Exactly.
And enjoying the process.
Exactly. And there are a few bonus ideas in the source material as well for those of you who want to take it even further.
Like what?
Well, they suggest things like interviewing an English teacher or a fluent English speaker to get their insights and perspectives.
Okay.
They also suggest participating in Q&A sessions to get your questions answered.
Right.
And they even recommend engaging in challenges like a 7-day vocabulary challenge to push yourself and to learn new words.
I love that.
Yeah, so there are lots of different ways to keep things interesting and to keep challenging yourself.
So what's the one thing our listeners can do today to start living English?
That's a great question, and I think the answer is to just start small.
Start small.
You know, pick one thing from this episode that resonated with you
Okay.
and commit to doing it today.
Today.
Yeah, whether it's changing your phone settings, learning 5 new words, listening to a short podcast, watching a funny cartoon, or even just practicing speaking for a few minutes in front of the mirror.
Right.
Just do something and then keep doing it consistently.
Consistency is key.
Consistency is key. And remember, practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes progress.
That's a great quote.
So keep practicing, keep learning, keep having fun, and keep living English.
And we'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.
Bye, everyone.